Usually when we talk about a high school baseball game, we think of something idyllic.
Right, like sunshine, cheering parents in the bleachers.
Exactly, the satisfying crack of the bat. But for a sophomore named James Clear, that crack of the bat was the last thing he heard before it hit him directly between the eyes.
Oh, man, it's a completely visceral, just horrific moment to try and imagine.
It really is.
The bat actually slipped from a classmate's hands during a full aggressive swing. The impact literally crushed his nose into a U shape.
Ugh. And his brain slammed into the inside of his skull. I mean, in a fraction of a second, he had a broken nose, multiple skull fractures, and 2 shattered eye sockets.
Just devastating.
And he didn't even realize how badly he was hurt at first. When he finally stumbled his way to the nurse's office, she asked him what year it was. He said 1998. It was 2002.
Wow.
Yeah. She asked who the president was, and he said Bill Clinton instead of George W. Bush. And then, terrifyingly, she asked his mother's name. It took him 10 full seconds of just blank staring before he could say it.
Well, because his body was fundamentally shutting down. He began having seizures, lost the ability to breathe on his own, and, he had to be airlifted to a larger hospital where he was placed into a medically induced coma. That level of trauma is the kind of event that redefines a person's entire existence.
It is. But the turn here is so unexpected because this devastating injury didn't end his life, and it didn't turn into some standard sports comeback movie either.
No, not at all.
After months of double vision, physical therapy just to be able to walk in a straight line, and the deep humiliation of being cut from the varsity team, he didn't bounce back through massive heroic leaps.
Right, it wasn't a montage.
Exactly. When he finally got to Denison University, he started recovering through tiny, almost aggressively boring routines. He went to bed early. He kept his dorm room completely tidy.
It's just the basics.
Nothing glamorous.
Yeah.
But those tiny routines compounded. I mean, he bulked up, became team captain, and eventually an academic All-American.
Getting to that level after severe brain trauma is exceptionally rare. And looking at the sources, what's fascinating here is how this deeply personal anecdote perfectly mirrors universal principles of neurological conditioning.
Yeah, it really does.
He proved a very counterintuitive concept, which is that massive success doesn't actually require massive action.
Which is exactly our mission for this deep dive into the source material. We're going to deconstruct the exact mechanics of how these tiny, easily overlooked behaviors compound into life-altering results.
Because that's the real secret.
Right. We want to give you, the listener, the actual tools to actively engineer your own reality by understanding the fundamental laws of behavior change.
Because once you understand the underlying machinery of your own brain, you stop relying on raw, exhausting willpower. You can actually build a system that works for you instead of against you.
Okay, let's unpack this.
Sure.
We really need to look at the math of these micro changes, and it is wild. It's what the sources call the aggregation of marginal gains.
Oh, the British cycling story.
Yes. Look at Dave Brailsford taking over British cycling in 2003. Up to that point, they had won exactly 1 Olympic gold medal in roughly 100 years.
They were terrible.
They were so bad that top bike manufacturers wouldn't even sell equipment to them because they thought seeing British riders on their bike would actually hurt sales.
Yeah, they were the undisputed laughingstock of the cycling world. But when Brailsford came in, he didn't look for one massive game changer. He wasn't looking for some secret aerodynamic frame or a new super supplement.
So what did he do?
He looked for a 1% improvement in everything, and I mean everything. They rubbed alcohol on the tires for slightly better grip. They had riders wear electrically heated overshorts to maintain exact muscle temperatures while they waited to race.
That is so specific.
Right. They even painted the inside of the team truck stark white.
Wait, I found that detail amazing. Why paint the truck white?
To spot tiny specks of dust.
Really? Just dust?
Yeah. If dust gets into the finely tuned mechanics of a race bike, it degrades performance by a tiny fraction. But it also subtly shifts the behavior of the mechanics, A white room naturally prompts people to be more meticulous. It's a psychological cue.
Wow. And those tiny, seemingly obsessive tweaks led to them absolutely dominating the Beijing and London Olympics and winning the Tour de France year after year.
The math on this is the 1% rule. If you get 1% better every day for a year, mathematically you end up 37 times better by the time you're done.
37 times. While reading this, it reminded me of an old philosophical concept called the Sorites paradox.
Oh, right. The sand.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The idea is if you have a pile of sand and you take away one grain, it's still a pile. If you drop one single coin in a jar, it doesn't make you rich. But if you keep adding that single coin over and over at some invisible threshold, poverty transforms into wealth.
That paradox perfectly describes human habit formation. But there's a brutal psychological trap embedded in that process.
Yeah, the ice cube.
Right. It's illustrated really well by the ice cube analogy in our notes. So imagine an ice cube sitting on a table in a freezing room, say 25 degrees. You start putting in the work to heat up the room, 26, 27, 28.
Okay.
You look at the ice cube, and nothing has happened. 29, 30, 31, still nothing.
It's just a block of ice.
Exactly. You've been putting in all this energy doing the right things, and the ice cube looks exactly the same. Then it hits 32 degrees and it melts.
See, this is where I think most of us fall apart. I mean, if we are putting in the work at the gym or trying to save money and we don't see results for weeks, isn't it just human nature to assume the system is broken?
Completely.
How do we know we're genuinely heating the room to 31 degrees and not just entirely wasting our time?
That feeling of wasting your time is incredibly common, but the reality is that the work isn't wasted at all. It's simply being stored.
Stored.
You are operating in what's called the plateau of latent potential.
Yeah.
The energy is accumulating, you just haven't crossed the visible threshold yet.
So you just have to wait it out.
Basically. Understanding this shifts how we have to view our daily reality. Your current outcomes, like the number in your bank account, your weight, the clutter in your house, those are just lagging measures of your habits. Your weight is a lagging measure of your eating habits.
And your wealth is a lagging measure of your financial habits.
Precisely.
So we basically get what we repeat. But that highlights a massive flaw in how society tells us to change. I mean, if the results are delayed like that ice cube, fixing our eyes on the final goal is a complete recipe for despair.
Oh, absolutely.
The sources argue pretty aggressively that we need to stop worrying about goals entirely and focus strictly on systems and identity. It reminds me of that legendary quote from the football coach Bill Walsh, the score takes care of itself.
Walsh understood something fundamental. Goals suffer from massive survivorship bias. We look at the gold medalists and assume their goal is what got them there.
Right.
But every Olympian in that race had the exact same goal of winning gold. The goal cannot be what differentiates the winners from the losers. It's the system.
The system is the differentiator. Furthermore, achieving a goal only changes your life for a moment. Think about it. You muster the energy to clean your completely messy room for an hour. You have a clean room today.
Yeah, but then what?
Exactly. If the underlying system driving your behavior is still being a messy person, it's wrecked again by tomorrow. You just create this exhausting yo-yo effect.
I get the frustration with the yo-yo effect, but abandoning goals completely feels like a stretch. So what does this all mean? Should you just wander aimlessly without a target?
Well, no.
Because thinking about it like a train journey, setting a goal seems like buying a ticket to a specific destination. You have to know where you want to end up. But the system is the actual engine of the train moving you along the tracks. You still need to know where you're going, right?
That's a great distinction. The goal sets your direction, absolutely, but the system is how you actually make the progress. And to truly rebuild that engine, you have to look at the 3 layers of behavior change, which you can picture like an onion.
Okay, an onion. Yeah. The outermost layer is changing your outcomes, so what you get. The middle layer is changing your processes, what you do. But the deepest core layer is changing your identity, what you believe about yourself.
That concept made a lot of sense when I read the story about Brian Clark in the sources.
Oh, the nail biter.
Yeah, he was a chronic nail biter his entire life. Willpower did nothing. Bitter nail polish did nothing. But then he randomly got a professional manicure.
Right.
And the manicurist mentioned offhand that he actually had really healthy, attractive nails under all the damage. Suddenly, he was proud of them. His identity shifted in that moment from someone who is desperately trying to quit biting their nails to someone who takes pride in caring for their hands.
And he never bit them again.
Never bit them again. It's wild.
That identity shift is the ultimate driver of behavior.
Right.
And the research backs this up powerfully. In voting studies, people who are primed by researchers to identify as a voter are significantly more likely to actually cast a ballot than people who simply express a desire to vote.
Because it's who they are.
Exactly. Every time you perform an action, you are essentially casting a vote for the type of person you wish to become. And the good news is, you don't need a unanimous vote to change your identity. You just need a majority.
Okay, so we want to start casting votes for this new identity. But how do we physically start? I mean, to do that, we have to dig into the neuroscience of the habit loop itself. This takes us all the way back to the 1890s to a psychologist named Edward Thorndike who was putting cats in puzzle boxes.
Thorndike's experiments are foundational. He would place a hungry cat inside a custom box that had a magical lever. Press the lever, a door opens to a bowl of fish.
Seems simple enough.
Right, but at first the cats behaved exactly how you'd expect. They thrashed around randomly, biting the bars, pawing at the corners. It took them about a minute and a half of chaos to accidentally trigger the lever and escape.
A minute and a half of thrashing.
But Thorndike kept putting them back in. Slowly, the cats associated the specific action of pressing the lever with the reward. By the end of the experiment, they were calmly stepping into the box, hitting the lever, and escaping in 6 seconds flat.
Wow.
The useless, chaotic movements completely faded away.
It's just the brain running a trial and error simulation until it reaches absolute automaticity, and that gives us the mechanical 4-step habit loop. Cue, craving, response, reward.
Exactly.
If we want to engineer good habits for ourselves, we have to master the first law of behavior change. Make it obvious. The brain is basically a prediction machine, constantly scanning our surroundings. We have to make the triggers for our desired behaviors impossible to miss.
A brilliant real-world example of making things obvious is the pointing and calling safety system used by the Japanese railway.
Oh, I've seen videos of this.
Yeah, if you ride a train in Tokyo, you will see the operators physically pointing at different objects, like the speedometer, the track signals, and calling out their status aloud. Signal is green.
It looks almost theatrical.
It does, but the mechanism behind it is profound. It takes a subconscious habit and forces it back to a conscious level of awareness. It reduces errors by up to 85%.
85%, that's huge.
Yeah, and you can do this in your own life with a habit scorecard. You literally sit down and list every single thing you do in the morning, from turning off the alarm to pouring coffee, and you rate them. You're just trying to become consciously aware of the invisible scripts running your morning.
Here's where it gets really interesting to me. Looking at all these examples, it makes me realize how much we just surrender to our environments.
Oh, completely.
We let our living rooms and offices boss us around. If I leave my phone sitting on my desk while I'm trying to read, I am practically begging my brain to be distracted.
Yes, you are.
But if I put it in another room, out of sight, I rarely even think about it. It's addition by subtraction.
Yeah.
You just remove the bad cues.
Visual cues are overwhelmingly the greatest catalyst of human behavior because roughly half of your brain's processing resources are dedicated to vision alone.
Half, just for vision.
Just for vision. The environment itself, the specific context, becomes the cue. Consider the famous design shift at the Amsterdam airport.
Oh, the fly in the urinal.
Yes. The cleaning staff were dealing with a lot of mess in the men's restrooms, so they etched a tiny photorealistic image of a fly near the center of the urinals.
Which sounds so weird out of context.
It does, but why does this work? Because men have a deeply ingrained biological instinct to aim at targets. They naturally aimed at the bug, and it cut spillage by 8% without putting up a single warning sign. The environment silently guided the behavior.
That is genius. But
Yeah.
the opposite is true too, right? We fall victim to bad cues causing chain reactions like the Diderot effect in the sources.
Oh, the scarlet robe.
Yeah, the Empress of Russia gave the philosopher Denis Diderot a gorgeous, luxurious scarlet robe. He puts it on, looks around, and suddenly his old rug looks terrible by comparison. So he buys a new one from Damascus. Then his chair looks shabby next to the rug, so he buys a leather one. One cue triggers the next. But the sources say we can actively hijack this chain reaction using something called habit stacking.
Right.
You say, after I pour my morning coffee, I will meditate for exactly 1 minute.
You're anchoring the new, fragile behavior to a cue that is already deeply neurologically hardwired into your daily routine.
Right.
But noticing a cue and setting an intention is only the first step. You still have to actually want to do the action. Which brings us to the second law. Make it attractive.
We basically have to learn how to actively manipulate our own desires. Because if we leave our brains to their own devices, our desires are constantly hijacked by what evolutionary biologists call supernormal stimuli.
Yeah, this is a big one.
Look at Nico Tinbergen's experiments with seagull chicks. These chicks are biologically programmed to peck at a tiny red dot on their mother's beak to get fed. But Tinbergen made a fake, exaggerated cardboard beak with 3 massive red dots on it.
And what happened?
The chicks went completely insane, pecking at it, ignoring their actual mothers.
Because they were presented with an exaggerated version of reality and their wiring couldn't handle it. Modern humans are living in a sea of supernormal stimuli. Look at junk food.
Ugh, don't remind me.
Food scientists spend billions engineering the exact bliss point of crunch, salt, sugar, and fat. They are purposely hijacking our ancient evolutionary drive to seek calories, sending our dopamine receptors into overdrive without ever signaling our brains that we are full.
And social media operates the exact same way.
Exactly, delivering more social validation in 5 minutes than our ancestors received in a year. The core mechanism driving all of this is dopamine. But the crucial distinction in the research is that dopamine spikes during the anticipation of a reward, not just the fulfillment of it.
Right, the lab rats who had their dopamine blocked didn't just stop enjoying their food, they literally died of thirst because they lost the desire to even walk over to the water.
The anticipation was completely gone.
So, to make good habits attractive, we have to create anticipation. We can use temptation bundling. A guy named Ronan Byrne, an engineering student, hacked his stationary bike so it would only power his Netflix screen if he was pedaling at a certain speed.
That is incredible.
Right. He bundled the thing he instantly craved, watching TV, with the thing he knew he needed to do, exercise.
Television networks actually use this exact psychology. ABC did it brilliantly with their TGIT lineup. Thank God It's Thursday.
Oh, I remember that.
They ran promos actively encouraging viewers to pair watching their dramas with drinking a glass of red wine and eating popcorn. They explicitly linked the behavior they wanted, tuning in with a relaxing, highly anticipated sensory reward.
Wow.
But individual desire is only half the battle when we talk about making things attractive. We also have to consider the incredible, almost gravitational pull of the tribe.
Social norms are terrifyingly strong. We naturally imitate the close, the many, and the powerful. Like the Polgar sisters in the sources, who were raised in a household completely obsessed with chess. To them, studying Grandmaster games all day wasn't a chore requiring willpower. It was simply how you earned love and respect in their specific family.
It was normal.
Yeah. On the darker side, you have Solomon Ash's conformity experiments, where people would look at 2 lines of obviously different lengths and agree that the short line was longer simply because everyone else in the room confidently said so.
Because we would rather be wrong with the crowd than right by ourselves. For our ancestors, being cast out of the tribe on the evolutionary savannah meant certain death. So we are wired to comply.
But wait, if we are biologically hardwired to just go along with the herd, aren't we fighting a losing battle against modern culture? If everyone around me at the office eats donuts and skips the gym, and my brain is screaming at me to conform to the tribe, how on earth do I win that?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, you don't win by fighting your culture. You win by changing your culture.
Changing it.
The strategy is to join a group where your desired behavior is their normal behavior, and crucially, where you already share something else in common. Consider the community nerd fitness.
Okay.
If you want to get in shape, but you feel deeply intimidated by traditional gym bros, you might give up. But if you join a fitness community composed of people who love Star Wars, cosplay, and video games, you leverage that deeply rooted herd mentality for your benefit.
You shift your identity from, I am an individual struggling to work out, to, we are nerds who lift weights.
Exactly.
It's brilliant. But let's move down the chain. Let's say the habit is incredibly obvious and you've made it highly attractive. If the actual task requires a Herculean effort, we are still going to fail. Human nature demands efficiency. That leads to the third law. Make it easy.
We are all governed by the law of least effort. The historian Jared Diamond wrote about how agriculture spread much faster east to west across Eurasia than it did north to south in the Americas.
And why is that?
Because moving east to west keeps you in roughly the same latitude, meaning the same climate and seasons. The crops still grow naturally.
Oh, that makes sense.
Right. But moving north to south means crossing entirely new climate zones, which requires massive effort and time to domesticate entirely new crops. Nature will always default to the path of least resistance.
And we fight that reality by mistakenly thinking we need to meticulously plan the perfect, flawless path before we act. But motion is not action.
No, it's not.
A college photography professor demonstrated this by splitting his class in 2. One side of the room was graded purely on quantity. Just submit 100 photos by the end of the term to get an A.
Okay.
The other side was graded strictly on quality. submit just one absolutely perfect photo. At the end of the term, the quantity group produced vastly superior work
Interesting.
because they were out in the world actually taking pictures, playing with lighting, failing, adjusting, and taking more. The quality group just sat around in their dorm rooms theorizing about perfection.
Which is exactly why the solution to the friction of starting is the 2-minute rule. Whenever you start a new habit, it must be scaled down to take less than 2 minutes to complete.
Less than 2 minutes.
Yeah. Read a book before bed becomes read one single page. Do a full yoga routine becomes take my yoga mat out of the closet. The legendary choreographer Twyla Tharp used
That's fun. Did
this.
she do?
She said her daily workout ritual wasn't the grueling 2 hours of weight training at the gym. Her ritual was simply putting on her workout clothes and hailing the cab outside her apartment. The moment she was sitting in the cab, the workout was practically inevitable.
Let's be real for a second, though. If I put on my running shoes, tie them, and then just stop and take them off after 2 minutes, I know I'm tricking myself.
Yeah.
I feel like that would just make me feel slightly ridiculous, not like an athlete.
Yeah.
How does reading one page actually result in a workout or a habit?
Well, it definitely feels silly at first, but it's not a trick. It is fundamentally about mapping human neurobiology. A habit must be firmly established before it can be improved. You cannot optimize a habit that doesn't exist.
Okay, that is a great point.
You have to standardize before you can optimize. The physical action of hailing the cab or putting on the shoes is wiring the neural pathway and locking in the identity. You are casting a physical vote that says, I am the type of person who doesn't miss workouts.
And once you've cast that vote and done the habit, how do you make absolutely sure you do it again tomorrow? The brain needs a payoff to close the loop. That brings us to the fourth learner. Make it satisfying.
This is perfectly illustrated by a major public health intervention in Karachi, Pakistan, led by researcher Stephen Luby. They desperately needed to get people living in extreme slums to wash their hands to stop the rampant spread of disease.
Which is a huge problem.
Massive. But basic health education wasn't enough. Knowing you might get sick in a month doesn't motivate immediate action. So they partnered with Procter & Gamble to introduce a premium soap into the neighborhood.
Premium soap.
Yeah, it lathered beautifully and smelled intensely like fresh mint. Almost overnight, hand washing transformed from a chore into a pleasurable, deeply satisfying sensory experience. The immediate reward shifted behavior and disease rates plummeted.
Because we are essentially walking around a modern world with Paleolithic brains trapped in a delayed return environment.
That's the reality.
Back on the savannah, every action had an immediate life or death result. Today, you go to work for a paycheck you won't see for 2 weeks. You suffer at the gym today for a heart attack you won't prevent for 20 years.
Right, the mismatch is huge.
The costs of your good habits are entirely in the present, but the rewards are completely trapped in the future.
Which means the secret is that we have to artificially attach an immediate reward to our good long-term habits. Habit tracking is an incredibly effective tool for this. Look at the story of Trent Deersman, a rookie stockbroker who put 2 glass jars on his desk every morning. One was empty, and one was filled with exactly 120 paper clips. Every single time he made a sales call, he physically moved one paper clip from the full jar to the empty one. Within 18 months, that simple visual tracking system helped him pull in millions of dollars for his firm.
Wow, just moving paper clips.
Or take Jerry Seinfeld's famous advice to young comics, don't break the chain. Get a giant wall calendar and put a big red X over every single day you sit down and write a joke.
So habit tracking is basically like giving our ancient immediate return brains a modern-day Scooby snack.
Exactly.
The visual progress of the paperclip or the red X is the immediate reward we crave. But isn't there a huge danger that we start obsessing over moving the paper clips and completely forget why we're making the sales calls in the first place?
Yes, and that danger is defined by Goodhart's law, which states that when a measure becomes a target, it ceases to be a good measure. If you only care about the specific number on the bathroom scale, you might starve yourself or dehydrate yourself to hit it, rather than actually getting healthy. The number is just a piece of feedback, not the entire system.
That makes sense.
And the most vital rule of tracking to avoid that obsession is avoiding the all-or-nothing cycle. The golden rule is never miss twice.
Because a bad workout still compounds. If your portfolio drops, avoiding a 33% loss is exactly as mathematically valuable to your long-term wealth as achieving a 50% gain. You just have to show up to protect your baseline.
Protect the baseline, exactly.
But what happens when you do all this? You've built the perfect system, the cues are obvious, the habits are locked in, and then You just get intensely bored.
This brings us to the advanced tactics of behavior change. The greatest threat to long-term success isn't failure. It is sheer boredom.
Boredom.
This dynamic is governed by the Goldilocks rule. Human beings experience peak motivation when working on tasks that are right on the edge of their current abilities. Not too hard, not too easy.
Like the sweet spot.
Right. Steve Martin became one of the most legendary comedians of his generation, not by writing a brand new hour of material every night, but by expanding his act by just a minute or two at a time. It kept him engaged in a zone of just manageable difficulty.
It's just like when you play a video game on easy mode. You win instantly, you get completely bored, and you put the controller down. You need it on normal or hard mode to stay engaged.
That's a perfect analogy.
But the sources also address the elephant in the room when it comes to peak performance, and that's genetics. Michael Phelps, the swimmer, is 6'4". Hicham El Guerrouj, the Olympic runner, is 5'9".
Okay.
Yet, incredibly, they have the exact same length inseam on their pants.
Wait, really? The exact same inseam?
Yeah, exactly the same. Phelps has the perfect elongated torso for swimming, and El Guerrouj has the perfect long legs for running. If they switched sports, they'd both be mediocre at best.
Genetics don't predetermine your success, but they absolutely predispose you to certain physical and neurological advantages. The secret of the elites is to rigorously choose a field of competition that naturally aligns with their inherent strengths.
I can hear people right now, though, saying, if genetics dictate so much, isn't that just a convenient excuse to give up if you aren't naturally gifted? Oh, I don't have the Phelps torso, so why bother trying?
This raises an important question, but it's a common pushback that misinterprets the role of talent. Genes do not eliminate the need for hard work. They simply clarify what you should be working hard on.
Ah, I see.
If you can't find a game where the odds are naturally in your favor, the strategy is to create one by combining your unique sets of skills. And even those with elite genetics have to relentlessly review their progress to avoid complacency.
Like Pat Riley's career best effort program with the 1980s Lakers, he took the most elite basketball players on earth and tracked their invisible 1% improvements, like diving for loose balls, boxing out night after night.
Because you can't just rely on talent.
You also have to keep your identity small as you grow, right? I mean, if your identity is rigidly defined as, I am the CEO, you will likely shatter when you retire or lose the job. But if your identity is kept to the core action, like I build things, you remain resilient and flexible no matter the context.
It is the crucial difference between being brittle and being resilient.
So bringing this whole journey together, we started with the shattering, visceral impact of a baseball bat to the face. And we've traced that path to the profound realization that our lives are entirely shaped by the invisible architecture of our daily routines.
It's powerful stuff.
It's the Sorite's paradox made real. One single coin doesn't make you rich. One single habit doesn't transform you. But you keep adding one coin over and over, at some point the reality permanently shifts. 1,000 tiny habits eventually make you an entirely different person.
Because every single habit you perform is ultimately just a vote for the identity you want to inhabit.
Which leaves us with this final thought for you to mull over. Those sources show us clearly that our environment and our modern technology can be harnessed to automate our habits, making success almost mathematically inevitable.
Right.
But if our daily struggles, our frictions, and our active battles against bad habits are the very forge where our identity is created, what happens to human character in a rapidly approaching future where AI and technology remove all friction from our lives entirely? If everything is engineered to be perfectly frictionlessly easy, do we risk automating away the very challenges that make us who we are?